saucy and we undead surging.
Even in death, you cannot defeat me.
I'm worming, I'm working, let's hurt him. Undead surging.
The essence of death, you are life-loving.
And if you think you're scaring skeletons, you got another thing coming.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to the graveyard, and console has finally received update 47 with subclassing, and then of course we just received console mods the other day as well, but we can dive into those in another build video. But as of right now, we are going to take a look at the Cryomancer that I have. So with that being said, there are a few things that are the same, and then of course there are some major changes, thus subclassing. We have brought over the Warden skill line, and we're just pretty much optimizing all of our ice and frost damage. Taking a look at our character sheet here right off the bat, our unbuffed stats are as they follow. The Magicka is sitting around 25,000, max health can go up or down respectively if you go into Battlegrounds with no CP, or if you decide to go into Imperial City or Cyrodiil. The recoveries are a bit low to begin with, but our backbar set will complement that very easily. Spell damage, we get about 5,000 before our Master Ice Staff proc, but then once everything's fully procced, we hit about 6,000 spell damage. Penetration goes up pretty high too, we're sitting around the 14-15k area. Spell and physical resistance are pretty good too on the back bar here. 31,000 spell resistance, 25,000 physical resistance. And then of course the Breton passive will make the spell resistance go up even more, if not doubled, whenever we have an elemental status effect applied to us. 35 points into magic, 29 points into health. We are using the Clockwork Citrus Fillet just to dip into the magic and health recovery. Stamina is really not that big of an issue just because we are simply using an ice setup, but there is an alternative that you could use, and that is a restoration staff on the back bar. So stamina is not super important. However, if you have to, you could change the food up depending on whether or not you require more stamina recovery. We're using the Apprentice just to boost our max damage throughout the entire character sheet here. 4146 is our base though, and then without it, depending on which Mundus that you go with, it'll just sit slightly below that 4,000 mark. Went over the food, potions, and Mundus. Let's go right into the gear because that's everyone's favorite part here. We're using the same Master's Perfected Ice Staff. This is going to proc a huge burst window. Just simply having it slotted gives us the 103 weapon and spell damage, and then of course it reduces the cost of destructive touch by 10%. This is going to open up a 600 weapon and spell damage window for 4 seconds when we activate it, and then if our weapon enchantment procs, we get an additional 348 weapon and spell damage for 5 seconds. Big burst window, and we can go over the combination here once we go through the gear and the skills, and you can see how everything is lined up. Our first set is Wretched Vitality. This is an all-around, pretty much the best sustained set in the game. It's going to give you all kinds of recoveries, and then when you're on your back bar, whenever you apply a major or minor buff or debuff, you're going to get the 260 mag and stamina recovery, along with the 130 mag and stamina recovery for 15 seconds. Those can stack, those can, use one or the other, but most of the time, the way that the buff mechanics work, you're pretty much going to have both of those on at all times. Very rarely will you ever have just one or the other. It's pretty hard to not have one major and minor buff going at a time. Jumping down to our monster stat, we're still rocking Nanatuk. Nanatuk is the only way to get Major Brittle in the game. There is no other set, skill line, passive, what have you, that can give you the Major Brittle. So we are stacking Major and Minor Brittle for this, which is a huge critical damage per se, and then when you pair that with some of the critical chance passives that we have with Necromancer, they synergize very well together. So the lower the health, the higher our crit chances. Then of course we're doing increased critical damage. Nanatuk's also nice because it provides armor. It's one of those monster sets that kind of does a little bit of everything. Gives you damage, gives you armor, gives you crowd control. It's an all-around super nice set. Wretched Vitality on the chest, Nanatuk Epaulets. We are running a 4-2-1 setup. So we have 4 light armor pieces, 2 medium pieces, and 1 heavy piece. You can play around with this however you like. I like playing like this because it gives you the critical damage from the medium pieces, and then you get the light armor passives as well, and then you're still maintaining a heavy chest, which is optimal for PvP. You're going to get alone just 3,215 armor from the chest. I have max health on this, and then Magicka on the rest. Some of these have try-enchants, but it's not super important. The important thing is having a good combination of the traits here. So you can see I have Impen, Divines, Infused, Well-Fitted, Reinforced, Impen. Just having a little bit of everything is kind of the way I play. You could have all Divines if you really want to, dive deep into that Mundus Stone, but 6% reduced cost of dodge, roll, and sprinting. That's always good. Stacking a little bit of Impen just because we're not running Rallying Cry, so just getting that slight buff to resistance is always nice. And then, of course, Infused. I think I just happen to have that. You could switch that to Divines to be a little bit more optimal, but it's not going to make or break the build. And then Frostbite, Necklace, and Rings, because the more light armor on the jewelry, the better, just to free up the room for the medium and heavy trait pieces. We are not running a Mythic, simply because, well, there's not room for one, and 2, we're running a arena weapon with a monster set. Now, in order to run a Mythic, you'd have to drop the monster set, but that's a huge part of the theme to the build, and we don't want to lose that Major Brittle because it is super strong, and then the 40% snare on top of it it's very it's very reluctant to not use it. Jumping into the skills here, first up, like I said, we switched over to the Warden passive, the Warden skill line, Winter's Embrace, and then we dropped the Bone Tyrant skill line for the Necromancer. Kept Living Death simply because the Spirit Guardian gives us that 10% damage mitigation, and then you could use the other stuff if you wanted to, but the passives in here alone are, enough to keep this skill line. If you don't like it, you could probably swap it out for something like maybe the Templar healing skill line, but I personally like having the Spirit Guardian just because it's a unique 10% damage mitigation. First up, Resolving Vigor. This is how we're going to get our minor resolve, and then it's a pretty decent heal too. Crystallized Slab. This is how you're going to basically keep those pesty Nightblades off of you that are going to be shooting those double proc shotgun merciless resolves. That 44,000 damage shield from 3 projectiles is super nice. And then each time you absorb a projectile, you're going to shoot back an icy bolt, dealing 4963 frost damage and stunning them. So it pairs really nice with Nanatuck too, because you know they're snared and then they get immobilized, and then if they happen to hit you with something, they're going to get CC'd into that too and take all kinds of damage. Sus, free skill, it's our major breach. Frost Reach, very decent damage up front. So 8651 frost damage, and then it gives us a sweet frost damage over time. And then, of course, all of our skills are basically buffed by Frostbite, except Blighted Blast Moans. It does do disease damage, but you know, if the enemy is chilled or if it has Minor Brittle, they're going to take that increased damage as well. And then, of course, Northern Storm. So this is pretty much what, you know, just completes the build and complements it so well. Just being a Cryomancer alone, having this giant ice storm just fly around you, reducing movement speed, increasing our damage done the longer it goes, and then gaining major protection on top of it. It is simply probably the best ultimate for this build. You could use Glacial Colossus in the front bar, but we're rocking the Warden skill line, so Northern Storm it is. Back bar, we have Healing Soul. This is part of the scribing skill lines, so if you don't have scribing, by all means, you can definitely put something else here like Resistance Flesh, but I'm using this just simply because the Major Vitality is hard to pass up. We get a little bit of Magicka and Stamina back too once we use this, and then it's a great burst heal once you proc that Major Vitality. Spirit Guardian, talked about the 10% damage mitigation. It's a little bit of healing over time, not too crazy, but you know, it gives us the corpse and the 10%. Race Against Time, this is how we're going to get Minor Force. Minor Force is going to increase our critical damage by another 10%, stacking with Major and Minor Brittle. And we're going to get the snare removal from this as well. If you don't want to use this, if you think you have enough crit damage, by all means, drop this for something else, but you know, the snare removal is pretty much what makes or break any 1vx video. If you don't have a snare removal, then you better have a gap closer or streak, because if you don't, you're going to get gunned down and killed. Ice Fortress, you know, aesthetically pleasing as it is, it does offer a pretty a useful Major Resolve buff, because, you know, Bone Armor did decrease the cost of Spirit Guardian and our Blighted Blast Bones, but this alone just giving us the minor protection too with the Major, and with the Major Resolve is simply a must-have, just because we do get that major protection when our Northern Storm's up. So as long as we have our armor going, we have major and minor protection at all times, pretty much. And we get Northern Storm quite frequently. You can see in the build video, either if I put it in the beginning of this or afterwards, I haven't decided yet, but we'll run a couple of clips and then you can see the build in action too. Plus we'll show the combination after the skill sheet here. And then Arctic Blast, this is probably one of my favorite skills, just simply because it used to be the Warden's burst heal, and then they've altered this skill so much to where it's pretty much like a back bar slot now. So you get the frost damage up front, and then if nobody's hit, you get healed for it. However, now it gives us basically a little damage over time. So every 2 seconds, we're going to get 1282 frost damage, and then after the 2 seconds, the enemy's going to get hit with the chilled status effect, and then they're going to get stunned after a 3-second delay. So there's a couple of ways that we can CC the enemy, and then our passives and Nanatuck will snare them and immobilize them. So all kinds of crowd control. And then backbar ultimate, I just happen to have Glacial Colossus here just because it's frost damage, but if you want to put something else here, by all means, Race Against Time, or not Race Against Time, what's the other one called? Temporal Guard. You get minor protection from that, but like I said, it's pretty much a flex spot. There's nothing really too crazy that you could put here. I did think about putting Eye of the Storm, so you could have Eye of the Storm in the back bar, or you could put Northern Storm and have them both, but you know, you'd be silly to not use Northern Storm over the other one. Alright, if you want to look at the passives here, the Winter's Embrace passives are really, really good for this build. So Shield Status Effect by 250 increases damage by 437, and then it goes off the higher of our weapon and spell damage. So when our Master's Perfected Ice Staff is procced, we're going to get that big 600 weapon and spell damage window, so that'll scale with this. Increase physical and spell resistance by 1240 for each Winter's Embrace slotted. We have 2 on each bar, so we pretty much keep that bonus. And then with a Winter's Embrace ability slotted, whenever you take direct damage from melee range, you apply a stack of Bite of Winter to them for 3 seconds, up to 5. Attackers at max stacks are afflicted with Major Maim for 3 seconds, reducing their damage done by 10%. So a super awesome passive to have in combination with the defensive kit that Winter's Embrace provides. Piercing Cold increases the amount of damage you can block by 8% and increases your frost damage by 15%. So that's super strong in itself, just by, you know, equipping an ice staff on both the front and back bar, and then you're going to have your damage increase just by, you know, simply all of our skills doing frost damage. I think this is Oreo, the DJ. Yeah, chilling in the build video. What's up, Oreo? What's going on, brother? All right, let's jump into the CP real quick. We'll wrap this up so that way it's not too strong. Too strong. This build is strong, don't worry, but you'll see it in action here in a minute. So, Blue Tree, Master at Arms, Wrathful Strikes, Resilience, Untamed Aggression. I like using Resilience simply because we don't have Rallying Cry, so this just gives us that little over-the-edge critical resistance that we need, putting us over the 2k mark. Red Tree, Celerity, Survival Instincts, Fortified and Boundless. And then the Green Tree, I have Friends in Low Places, Master Gatherer, Gifted Rider, Steed's Blessing. Green Tree, not super important, but while I'm on the topic, for those of you that don't know, in your subclassing journeys, there is a passive down here called Discipline Artisan, and just by having this passive active, it increases your experience gained by active skills and their skill lines by 3%. So there's an extra 15% bonus just by having this on. So if you're trying to level your subclassing skills and you need a little bump in your experience gained, go ahead and turn this on and do yourself a favor. Alright guys, that wraps up the build video. Hope you enjoyed it. What did you like about it? What didn't you like about it? What would you do differently? Will you be trying this in the update 47 as console now journeys on to the wonders of subclassing? I know I'm enjoying it simply just because, you know, being able to make all of the themed builds just feel a little bit more in role with the role-playing aspect of the game. With that being said, I think I'm going to take Oreo here. We're going to jump in some BGs, maybe do some duels, and have some fun. Peace out, guys. Stay frosty, and I'll see you in the graveyard.